how do I stay focused on my goal until I achieve it? And so we're on day three, and I just want to review what we talked about on day one. So day one, I shared with you, right? And go back and watch that. If this is a topic that you know would support you in terms of how to stay focused, how to operate on a daily basis, how to think in a way that keeps you on track. If you're somebody who struggles on your own to not stay focused, then I want you to go back and watch this entire series starting on Monday. And so on Monday, I had just came back off of a trip, an entrepreneur trip, and I was talking about the fact that I was on that success panel. I was on that panel the year before. I talked about being a part of another coaching community and having another business coach years ago when I had my fitness centers, and how I was on that success panel too. And why I was sharing that with you is because there's a way that we operate when we start operating this way that it just carries over into everything that we do. And so it almost becomes like your results just become automatic, because when you start to think in a way that I'm sharing with you and you start to operate in this way, those things become automatic, right? But it is a matter of interrupting whatever patterns, thought patterns, and habits you have been operating at so that you can create a different result. Okay, so the first thing that I shared with you that works for me consistently, and that works for every person I see doing really incredible things in their life, and that's different for everybody, right? But I mean it on the sense that when you check in with them, like they're happy about their life, they're fired up, they're making a contribution in the way that they want to be making a contribution. Typically they're making, great money. Typically they're in great health, right? Because all of these things go together. All of these things go together. When you start operating in a certain way, it starts to impact all the other areas of your life, positively and negatively. That's why I teach people how to shift the way that they think and to start manifesting what you want on purpose, with intention, not just by accident, so that you can have consistency. So what I shared is the number one thing that I start with is personal responsibility. So I take personal responsibility for getting the result. I don't leave it up to the coach. I don't leave it up to the program. I don't leave it up to the book, the trainer, my husband, my kids, right? Whenever I say I'm going to do something or achieve something, or I start to follow someone or sign up for coaching or something like that, I commit that I'm going to get the result, whatever that means, right? It means maybe I need to follow the coaching. Maybe it means I need to do things I don't want to do that feel scary. I need to trust. And it means for me, I'm going to set up my life in a way that I don't allow myself to get off track. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, a couple of those tips that you can use. So being personally responsible, it really starts there, because if you go into something like, well, I signed up for this, so, hopefully, they'll do everything for me, right? And you don't say that, hopefully they'll do everything for me, but check in with yourself, because oftentimes people are expecting the program or the person to make something happen for them. People do it in relationships too. They expect their partner to be responsible for their happiness. That's not taking personal responsibility. So that's number one. Then number two is you got to declare it. You got to put it out into the universe. You've got to speak it. You've got to speak it to somebody besides yourself. You've got to put it, it's BS when people are like, yeah, well, I'm just going to put my head down. I'm just going to do it in secrecy or in silence. And then I'm going to come out and show all the results. Okay, maybe there's very few people who really can operate at that level. And, the truth is, when you don't declare it and tell people about what your goal is or what you want to aspire, it's typically because you don't want to be held accountable for it. You want to somehow be able to get off the hook, right? If you don't actually produce that result. So you got to be vulnerable. Put yourself out there, declare it, and know that when you declare it, it is going to come to be, because you're someone who keeps your word. That is so important. You're someone who keeps your word, first and foremost to yourself, which is who it really matters for. And then as a result, you're keeping your word to others. You're teaching people how to see you. You're teaching people how to depend on you, what to think about you. You're teaching people how to treat you. And just energetically, that sets you up at a certain frequency of just knowing the confidence that it is going to come to be. So personal responsibility, number one. Number two, declare it, put it out there. And then yesterday we talked about you've got to know why you're setting this goal. So know the why, know the bigger purpose of your goal, identify it, get really clear about it, get emotionally connected to it. Get emotionally connected to why you're doing something, what it's going to feel like when you get there, and what it's going to feel like if you don't, right? So get present, get connected to the things that you're saying you want to do. I constantly have people reaching out to me and saying, oh, I want to do this, or I'm inspired by you because of this, or I want to do that. And then they don't put their money where their mouth is, right? Like, and I'm saying this with love, but a loving interruption, like a reality check. Like, it's not about what you say you want. It's actually about what do you do? What do you put, like what actions and energy do you put behind it and commit to it? Or are you okay with just constantly saying, I want this business, or I want this kind of body, or I want this kind of relationship, I want this kind of money. Like, are you okay just saying it? Just saying it and then not actually being in it for the long term, not doing what needs to be done to actually have it come to be? Because here's the truth. Whatever it is that you really want, you can have it. You can make it happen. If other people have it, that means it's possible. Maybe it's going to be a longer road for you, or a more difficult road, or maybe you just need to learn how. You haven't learned how yet, but it's possible. Number one, if you can actually envision it and declare it, it's possible, because that's what the laws of the universe say. The only reason we have electricity, right, is because somebody envisioned it. They imagined it first. And then clearly, if what you want, and most people are setting goals that other people have already achieved. So if you want that, you just need to figure out how to get there, put in place the people, the information and all of that can support you in getting it. But like the sidebar, the tangent that I'm going off on right now is because I got to be honest. It gets frustrating having people just come to me talking about what they want, right? Like, I'm committed to helping people get what they want, but I can't be more committed to what you want than you are. Does that make sense? Is this resonate with you guys? And listen, I know you see this in your own lives and in your own circles with people, right? So you know how frustrating that is. So how do you break that cycle? So that's why knowing why you want something is important. It can't just be lip service. Like, go deep as to why you want it and what's it going to cost you if you don't get it. Maybe it's not a big enough cost, and so you don't care. So maybe you need to shift and have a different goal or a different vision. Here's what I know for sure. High performers, all of us truly, but especially high performers, need to constantly be setting goals. I've said this before, I think, in this group, but there's a study that was done, a scientific study where I can't remember how many decades they studied these group of people. But what they found is that the people who have midlife crises, right? They have midlife crises, go crazy, are high performers who, because they achieved so many things in their business or in their athletic life, in their personal life, what happens is, if they stop setting goals, if they stop pursuing, goals because they buy into that old, I don't think we do anymore, but they buy into that old story of like, when you get 50, you just sit back and, if you make great money, you retire and you just chill out. Well, guess what? The people who were identified and clearly had signs of being high performers in their lives, that didn't work for them. And that's where, they had that quote unquote midlife crisis. The people who had kept continuing to set goals and kept pursuing dreams and setting new dreams were, did not have that experience. Now, just any old average person, yeah, they're not having a midlife crisis. They're happy to have gotten to a certain age and, like, you know, just be cool with the status quo. But that's not what we're talking about in here. So the reason I'm saying that is I want to land with you how important it is, your goals, your dreams, your visions. That's what's going to keep you in the creative space. It's what's going to keep you lit up, give you something to really, you know, aspire to, wake up for, and share with others. So here's your 2 tips as we have 5 minutes left in this live. And listen, as you're watching this, whether you're watching live or you're watching the replay or you're watching on YouTube, I want you to tell me what's landing for you in the comments, number 1, and also ask me your questions. Ask me your questions because it may pop up something that I hadn't considered that you need, because it will support you. Okay, so the next tip that I want to give you for today is, once you've got your big goal, you've got to break it down into smaller goals. I know that you've heard this before. This piece is nothing new, but often people don't do it. The people that come to me who are overwhelmed, burned out, they keep starting over, like, one of the main things that overwhelms them is that they set this big goal. Like, people will come to me and say, okay, I set a goal to make $100,000 in my new business that I just started. Guess what? Some of us can do that. But if you've never even made 50,000, like, why are you setting your goal at 100? Like, that gets to be a vision. I get to have a 6-figure business. Or if you've already had a multiple 6-figure business, you get to have a 7-figure vision. But that doesn't become, like, out of the gate your goal. You've got to break that down into micro goals so that you can actually manage getting there. I teach people how to manifest on purpose. I teach something called, I teach a cash tool manifestation that has worked for me and many others. But what happens is, from the beginning, they set it way up here, and then they start saying, oh, manifesting isn't working for me. Guess what? It's because you're setting a goal that's bigger right now than you actually believe you can achieve. Do you get that? You're setting the goal so big that you don't actually believe it in your body that you can achieve it. But what happens if you take it and just break it down and say, okay, this year I'm gonna achieve this, or this quarter, or this month, or this week, or today. You guys know how quick a year goes by. All of a sudden you get to the year mark and you look back and you're like, oh wow, look at how much I accomplished. That is a result of keeping your focus nice and tight. So you can have the big vision, but then you've got to break the big goal into smaller pieces. So I'll use just a quick example that I think will be easy for you to understand. When I set out to turn pro as a bikini bodybuilder, I didn't say really by when. I said, I'm going to keep going until I turn pro. I set that goal back in December of last year. I ended up turning pro in July. But here's what happened, right? Like I said, I set the vision and I knew I would keep going until I did it, right? I declared it publicly, took personal responsibility for it, hired my coaches and all of that. But of course, I've got to be responsible for getting there. I knew my why. My why was because I knew that the mindset that it was going to require for me to go pro and to, like, manage my time, my thinking, my discipline. The reason that I wanted to do that is not just to be pro in that sport. That didn't matter to me as much as how I knew that was going to positively impact the other areas of my life. Because the way that I saw it is, I want to be pro in all areas of my life. You get that? See how my why got deeper than just like, oh, I want to have a trophy, or I want to, I want to look great, right? Like, underneath it, it was like, damn, if I can do that, and I know that it's going to require like certain sacrifice, it's going to require me to have the mental fortitude, it's going to require me to trust the coaching, to follow the coaching, it's going to require me to be vulnerable, put myself out there. Like, all of that was in my mind. And I said to myself, wow, as a result, that's gonna have me think like that in my own business. That's gonna have me think like that in my personal life with my family. So I get to go pro in all these areas. See how the why is like emotional, right? It's emotional. I wanted to go from amateur to pro. So I set the vision. I knew why, and then I broke it down into smaller goals. So with my coach, we broke it down into micro goals. Okay, this is going to be the first show, right? Because you have to do shows to qualify. So we planned out the first show, and the goal with that show is to win, right? Because I need to win in order to go to the nationals. And from that, we broke down what our quarterly goals were, what our monthly goals were, and then literally a weekly goal, because every week I would do a check-in with my coach, with photos, with my food, right? So do you see how what happened is, instead of me focusing like, oh my God, like how am I gonna go pro? Oh my God, there's all this, there's all that. I just focused on whatever micro step I was in. I don't even think about like what I need to do like a week before. I didn't even think about the posing stuff that I had to do because that was scheduled a few months out. I focus on the micro goal. I don't focus on the bigger one. I set it, I've got it planted in my body, in my energy, and then I just focus on the small steps. What goes along with this is tracking your results. So you've got to have benchmarks in whatever it is you're doing. Like if you're building a business, you need to know your numbers inside and out, right? So like if you have a financial goal in your company or in your personal life, you need to be tracking that, right? So you're breaking it down into smaller goals and then you're tracking it. What gets tracked actually, what gets measured, what's that phrase? What gets measured gets accomplished, or something like that, right? And it's the truth. When you're trying to operate everything in your head, like it's only going to last for so long. How many things do you have in your head, right, on a daily basis, right? So you can only operate from that place for so long. So with the example that I gave you of, going pro, we were tracking everything along the way, tracking my meals, doing the weekly photos, because guess what? If I didn't do the weekly photos, we make assumptions. There's things that we don't see. We don't see our progress. We don't see often we underestimate our progress, but also we sometimes overestimate. And so it was important to track and see side by side. Oh, we need to add a little more muscle definition here. Oh, we need to come down here. We're looking for symmetry. Little things like that matter. Tracking your meals matters, not just kind of thinking like, no, I know I ate this much today, or I can eyeball it. That's not pro. Like I had to get very specific on that. Same thing in my business. I'm tracking my numbers. I'm tracking what's working with clients, right? So whatever it is that you're doing, whatever your big goal is, break it down into micro goals and then track it. That's how you operate on a pro level. Can you imagine like professional athletes, they have a coach who's like, has no idea, what they did last year or last week compared to what they're doing this week. I mean, it just doesn't work like that. You see them, they get out their notepad, they're tweaking based off of, this game, how you operated there, right? Like everything gets to get tracked when you have a goal. And if the goal's so big, how can you really track it, right? Like if it's way out there. That's why the smaller micro goals that will help get you to the bigger goal, that's why that's what you're tracking. Okay, hopefully this resonates with you, and I'm going to go through and answer any questions or comments that you posted. Remember, let me know what is landing most with you. Do you use any of these things? Do you use anything that I'm sharing here? And what have I shared today or this week, Monday and Tuesday, that has had you shift the way you're going to approach goal setting? share with me and put any questions that you have. Okay, I'm going to be back tomorrow with 2 more tips to tie this up. Not necessarily tie it up, because on Friday we are going to have a hot seat guest, and we're going to talk about this topic, and we're going to like really break down. We'll look at the way she's setting goals, where she's falling short, and you'll see me be able to coach her right on the spot and plug in the missing pieces. Okay, by the way, I've got 1 VIP day left in October. I've got 1 left in October. So if you want to get on the phone with me, talk about like what that looks like, what result you will get, you know, what guarantee there is when you have a VIP day with me. I'll put the link in here so that we can get on the phone and talk about whether or not you're a good candidate for that. I'll tell you the truth, not everybody is. So I am happy to be here with you guys every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 7 a.m. Pacific. So I will see you tomorrow morning. Bye.